an FTI perspective, and a welcome from me. My name is Moira. I'm the brand manager for FTI. And just to give you a little bit of context as to how excited we are about this evening and how we came to be where we're at right now. So I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but just to fill you in a little, from an FTI perspective, we've been wanting to introduce an international flavor almost to our portfolio and to the South African market. So we began chatting to Ronak a few months ago. Of course, Ronak is no stranger to us in South Africa. And basically, we then just started talking about delivering different kinds of best practice courses or webinars into our market. And the rest, they say, is history. So basically, tonight is the beginning of a chapter with Ronak into our International Innovation Series. Obviously, Ronak's going to take you through various things and we'll expand on it as we go along. But really welcome. Thank you, Ronak. Welcome to this evening. Thank you very much for being with us. And I really hope you all enjoy it as much as I know you're going to. Thank you and enjoy.
Okay. Thanks, Moira. So welcome everyone. Good evening. Thanks for making it here after a long day. I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this a lot because I've been in the Agile world as well as business analysis world for a long time now. And there are a few things that I've observed on the ground and have been able to implement some success stories as well. And I've been looking forward to share that with a larger audience today. So let me begin by quickly introducing myself. Again, my name is Ronak Sanghavi. I have been in the IT space for 22 years now. Past 17 years, I have been exclusively in business analysis, and then now for the past 5+ years in Agile as well. During this time, I have worked as an individual BA on enterprise scale projects. I have set up and managed BA teams. I have set up and managed BA Center of Excellence. And now I'm the co-founder and managing partner of ValueBase. So ValueBase, we are an IIBA and IREB endorsed education provider. We exclusively focus on business analysis and now Agile solutions as well. We have operations in 5 countries, including US and South Africa. And we have 3 main offerings or service lines rather. We have skill assessments in various scenarios. We have learning solutions, which includes training and coaching. And we also have consulting-based advisory to help business analysis function mature and not just individual BAs. So, and really, as Moira said, I also have been very excited in partnering with FTI to bring some of these solutions and services in the South African market. It all started when I was there 2 years ago for the BA Summit, and I saw the energy and the vibrancy in the BA community out there in South Africa, which was much higher than I've seen anywhere else. And I've traveled quite a bit in the BA world. So that's where my attraction to South Africa market began, and thankfully it has culminated to a partnership with FTI, and I'm really looking forward to a lot more combined offerings in the market there. But enough about that. Let's dive into today's topic because, as I said, it's a wonderful topic, and I have a lot to cover. So I think we've muted all of you, but if at any point, if you have any burning question, please do unmute yourself and do ask a question. I will try to leave some time at the end as well to go through your questions. You feel free to type them as well in the chat. I'm sure someone will be tracking that, and then we can cover them at the end. So I want to begin now by first sharing with you 3 statistics that I recently read from the latest edition of the annual State of Agile report, which is the world's largest and most widely accepted survey of the Agile world. Really. So the first statistic is 97% of the organizations around the world that responded to this survey, pretty large survey, thousands of respondents, they all are using Agile. So that's great news. But the bad news is that only 16% of them believe that they are competent enough in Agile practices. So that's a pretty low number, right? And the number one barrier they seem to claim is the fact that the organizational culture has not really kept in pace, and it's not really aligned to the agile values. Um, so even from my perspective, from what I see on the ground, I think these three statistics really reflect the true state of agile evolution and the agile journey, which is high in adoption, low in maturity, and culture still rules, right? That is really the message that I also have been getting from my observations around the world. And today's webinar really hits at this point, right? It is at the intersection of culture and mindset. That is where we are going to be throughout the webinar today. So I'm pretty excited, looking forward to it. Now, generally speaking, webinars are not as much fun as classroom sessions because because we have a high number of audience attendees, and I'm not able to really have a two-way conversation. I'll still try to be ambitious about this webinar, and I hope that by the end of this webinar, you walk away with some real learnings which you can start implementing immediately, like tomorrow. Some of these principles that that you can start implementing and start seeing value from it. So let's begin. So the first thing, before we start talking about the agile principles, I want to quickly set the context. So what has happened, especially in the last decade, is that because of the rapid disruptions and advancements in technologies, because of the fact that information is everywhere now, it quickly spreads like wildfire around the world. The fact that we have social networks now, and they've had such a far-reaching impact on society to the extent that it has changed all our behaviors. And obviously the fact that we have some very intelligent productivity tools which have made us smarter and have made us more productive. So fueled by these forces, the customer that we have been dealing with in the past decade or so has now come to expect new products and new features almost every day now, right? And when they want a new product, they want it now. Not just that, they also want to make sure that these products and features are aligned to their rapidly evolving preferences and needs and desires. Today's customer also expects to be involved in the process of creation and want to be in control of how the product shapes up. And if that was not enough, today's customer is also very empowered because they have access to all the information. They think for themselves, they form opinions, they have preferences, and more importantly, they have avenues and forums to express their opinions and gather in numbers and make sure that they are heard. So this, if you put this in the IT context now, this is what we've been dealing with. This is what IT has been dealing with in the past decade, this kind of a customer. And yet, even after adopting Agile, the mindset and the approach has still been that of the traditional delivery lifecycle, which is on your left here. So what we've been doing is kind of delivering value kind of in a big bang approach. Even when we are using Agile, I'll explain that a little bit when we talk about the first principle. IT has been resisting change for a long time now. We still kind of work in siloed mode, and we still do handoffs and hand things over. And we still like to tell business, tell us what you want and then leave us alone, we will take care of it. So this is the kind of mindset and approach that, largely speaking, this survey that talks about the organizational culture being not aligned to the Agile values, this is what really it means. And this is why it is no surprise that Agile has been adopted so popularly and so widely, but at the same time, it has not delivered as much as it has promised. And again, the reason for that is this mismatch in culture, which is what we're going to be talking about. So to me, Agile is really much more than a methodology, okay? It is also, beyond the methodology, it is also how you approach situations, how you think, and how you really are. And that's where we start talking about these 6 principles. Through these 6 principles, I hope to impart the distilled learning that I've had in really kind of living up to this definition of Agile, which is it's way more than the methodology. In fact, when I think of Agile, Let me do this. Let me say this actually. I'm going to guess that today, if all of you, if someone woke you up in the middle of the night and asked you to speak the first word that came to your mind when someone said agile, I would venture to guess you would say scrum, right? That is usually the first word that comes to people's mind, or maybe Kanban for some of you. What I wish should happen after today, after this webinar, is when now someone wakes you up and asks you, what do you have to say when I say the word agile? You will say the word mindset. Okay. If that happens, I think this webinar would have been successful. Okay. So, my goal really is that through these 6 principles, I can help you understand and appreciate and even start practicing to some extent the fact that agile is just not a methodology. It is how you will approach the situations going forward, how you think differently, and how you just are different. At least I know I have changed as a person since I've embraced agile in its true spirit, especially these 6 principles. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. The first one is all about having a strong desire to deliver realized value as soon as possible and as frequently as possible. Now, you might be thinking, hey, Ronak, what is so different about this principle? Why even call it out as a principle? Because this is like Agile 101, right? Every Agile methodology, for everyone, every methodology, this is kind of baked into it. In fact, if you take Scrum, we deliver value every 2-3 weeks at the end of the sprint, right? When we deliver user stories and the product owner accepts them. Well, I would agree with you, but that is only true in theory. In reality, what happens is, and that's why I have used this word realized. So let me explain that. Unless an organization is using DevOps, okay, then unless that is true, what happens is they ship out a product release on average, typically once a quarter. In fact, for many organizations, it's even less frequent. It's usually once in 6 months. Because the overhead of shipping out a product to end customers, to real customers, is pretty high, not just on the IT side in terms of integrating everything, performing the UAT, and then implementing the final code and the setting of the environments, but also on the business side. There are many business activities that have to happen before and after the shipping of any new release. So because of that, that is how infrequently it happens. So even though you are in Agile, you may actually be delivering the new releases and new features to end customers every 3 to 6 months. Okay, so what happens is, let's say let's take the example of you release once a quarter. So you might have around 5 development sprints in 1 quarter. Now, as a team, you might be thinking, hey, we are delivering value every sprint. We are delivering user stories, completed and accepted user stories, but that's just potential value, because these user stories are just sitting there waiting to be integrated together, waiting to be released at the end of the quarter to the end customers. And until that happens, the organization really does not see any benefit. So if you look at it objectively, while you may be delivering value, you may be working very hard, until you do the release to the end customers, until then at the end of the quarter, or even more than that, longer than that, the organization is not getting any benefits, right? And that is what I mean by realized value. And so the gap I see is that most organizations that I've had exposure to, they feel that, hey, we have implemented Scrum, we've implemented Agile, so this principle is automatically taken care of. Well, that's not the case, because we are still delivering value in a big bang approach, realized value, not potential value. And this is where this principle comes in. So let me elaborate further by giving you 2 tips on how to apply this principle. We will start by applying it at a macro level first, and then I will have you involved in this process. If you thought this 1-hour webinar was for you to just listen in, I'm sorry to disappoint you, because you'll have to do some work as well. That is really just the way I prefer to engage with the audience. So anyway, let me apply this principle at a macro level, at a project level, and then I will have you do that at a more micro level later. So when I say macro level, I am talking about the product release, which again, let's assume happens once in a quarter. So what happens is, when you apply this principle of early and frequent value delivery, to this kind of a situation where you are releasing at the end of every quarter, this is what you would do different. What you would do is you would take your final deliverable, which is a release, and break that into pieces, smaller pieces. And in terms of what size, number of pieces, and the size of each piece should be determined not by you, but by your customers, right? And in the case of Scrum, usually the product owner is the proxy of the customer. So the product owner gets to decide how you break your deliverable, which is the release, into smaller chunks. And this is what actually happens. So you as a business analyst can work with the product owner and the team to prioritize the user stories. Let's say there are 40 user stories in these 5 development sprints that make up the entire release. So you prioritize the 40 user stories in such a manner that by the end of second or third sprint, you are able to deliver a functional prototype of the product. Now, this is not a release. This is not a release. It is still a prototype. And you might say, hey, but we prototype every sprint anyways. Well, that is different. The objective of that prototyping that you do every sprint is only from a perspective of eliciting requirements or validating them or communicating requirements to the team. What I'm talking about is giving a functional prototype to your customers through the product owner so that they can actually derive some tangible benefits for the organization or for themselves as customers. So let me give you some examples of what that might be based on my real life experiences. So I'll give you 3 instances. There was one time where we delivered, again, we were releasing every quarter or even sometimes longer than that, but around mid-release, so in just 3 sprints, we had given a functional prototype to one of our customers who in turn used that as a sales tool, gave a demo to their potential clients, setting their expectations that this was just a prototype, but it had sufficient breadth to it that it was a good tool for them to have a discussion with their end clients, end customers, on how this product, when fully developed, could solve their problems. So they actually were successful in acquiring one beta customer just by using this functional prototype which we delivered to them literally 3 sprints into, which was not even a formal release. So this is one way we delivered tangible value because we had this mindset that how can we take the user stories and not wait till the end of the release to deliver real value to the business? How can we deliver it sooner? The second instance was when the product owner took this functional prototype and shared that with the relevant business stakeholders who we did not have access to as the team. And these stakeholders were responsible for executing these business activities to support the launch of the release that was going to happen at the end of the quarter. But just after the 3 weeks, they could see this functional prototype and they could at least get their hands around it. They could now see what it might look like, and they could at least start their scoping and planning activities so that they could utilize their time better rather than just waiting until the end of the quarter and the UAT to begin, when they would typically see it for the very first time. But now they could see a pretty good version of it already, and they could start planning. And the third instance was when our team was working on one specific module of a very complex product, and our product owner was also the product owner for another team, which we did not have any knowledge of. We did not even know that this team existed because it was sourced by a different vendor. But we shared data structures between our team and their team. In fact, they depended on us on the data structure. So by the end of 3rd or 4th sprint, I forgot, we actually gave them a stable data structure, a data schema, which then the product owner shared with that team, and then they could start their work sooner. So again, providing tangible value to the organization without having to wait till the final release. Okay. Anyone has any questions? You can quickly unmute yourself and ask me before I continue. So if not, if you don't have a question, what you can do is while I wait for the question, give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Sorry.
Yes.
While we are taking this question, the others can read this. This is a scenario that is inspired by real life situations that I've been in. And what I would like you to do is read this quickly and then take around 30 seconds, just because we don't have a lot of time. take around 30 seconds to see how you can apply the first principle of delivering early value and frequent value. Again, real value which is of use to someone. So please read this and think of what will you say next in this scenario. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead. What was the question?
Sorry, Ronak, there's two questions that have been answered on the Q&A portion. I'm not sure if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see the number, but I'm not able to keep track of those. So you'll have to help me.
There's two questions there. The one question is, so the design team is working on the prototype, something similar to InVision?
Okay, so thanks for the question. Let me clarify. So this prototype is really, it's not like you have to do something different. All we had to do was we just prioritize the stories in such a manner. Anyway, we were going to do that work. We just picked those 10 stories first before the other 30 stories, which when done together and just integrated together at the end of third sprint would deliver this functional prototype. So it was not that only the design team was working on it. We did the same work that would have done otherwise, which is the elaboration of the user stories, the designing, the development, and the testing. Exactly the same. The only difference was because we had this strong desire that we want to give something more tangible to the business community much sooner, we just prioritize the user stories differently with inputs from the product owner, and we just sequenced our work differently to enable them to leverage it. But there was no other special work done just for the prototyping. I hope that answers the question.
And Ronak, a second question was, can you suggest which the best tool is that can be used to manage sprints?
Okay, best tools, the two that are most popular according to statistics are Jira by Atlassian and version 1, right? These are the two of the most popular tools to manage agile items, backlogs, items, and stories. Okay. So
can you hear me?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had that same question regarding the tool. So I was just reading through some of the articles and also came across VSTS, the Visual Studio. Can you compare that? How much easy Jira will be compared to the VSTS?
So it's a tool specific question. It's not really aligned to today's topic. So I will have to defer on that. If you don't mind, just make sure that I have your email address.
Okay, that's
fine.
fine.
You can just type it in, and then we can have a separate conversation.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure. So coming back to this principle, I'm just cognizant of the time here. I want to cover 5 more principles. So I hope people have had a chance to kind of think through this and decide what they will say, keeping in mind that they want to add value sooner. All right, you can. We'll do this for 5 more times for 5 other scenarios as well. You can quickly write down your response or just make a mental note or even type it in one of the chat windows. Feel free to do that. What I'm going to do is, again, because of lack of time, I'm just going to share what I would have done and how I would have applied this principle of early delivery of value and explain to you how. So here in this specific case, now I intentionally gave you a slightly different situation here. In this case, as a business analyst, you are the customer, right? The person who is actually doing something and delivering value is the QA by giving you the test artifacts. You are the customer for the QA in this particular situation. So it's not like this principle only applies when you are the provider. No, it also applies when you are the customer, especially if you see that your provider who is giving you value is not employing this principle of delivering early value, then you can go ahead and suggest that they do that. And that is what the scenario is here. So what I would say here is that, hey Sam, having said that, I suggest that as soon as you complete your test artifacts, which is the scenarios and the test case for the first user story, just send them to me, okay? So that, because then and then keep doing that. As you finish a user story, keep sending me that. Don't wait to finish all of them and then send it to me, because then this approach will help me manage my time better in the next 10 days. Also, if there are any gaps in your test artifacts, then I can point them out much sooner, and you have enough time to plug those gaps and send it to me again for my review before I go on vacation in 10 days. Because otherwise, if you don't do this, and if you just wait to send all artifacts for the 8 stories at the end, and I only have 3 days, then I will not be able to kind of deal with these exceptions or these gaps. So here, this is what I would say if I'm employing this principle. And there are two tangible values I am getting as a customer from what the QA does. One is I'm able to manage my time better, and second is that I can do my job better as well with higher quality, because now I have enough time to correct their mistake and review it again for the second time. So this is something that you can do. So we'll switch on to the next principle, but before we do that, just want to say one thing. A generic formula for you to apply is that every time you have to deliver something, whether it's at the macro level, at the project level, or at a micro level, which is a simple task, a simple document that you have to send to someone, take your deliverable and then try to break it into pieces and try to deliver those smaller pieces of the final deliverable much sooner. You're still delivering the same deliverable, but by delivering it in chunks, you're actually increasing the total value they're getting. It's like the sum is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts kind of a situation. I hope you can see that. Any question just for this principle itself? Not other questions, just in implementing this principle, any questions? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the second principle, which is just in time. Now, this principle really balances the benefit of delaying something with the cost of delaying it. All right. So when I say benefit of delaying, let me tell you what I mean by that. Think of these two situations. You have to document a user story as a business analyst. Now, in one case, you document the user story just 1 week before the sprint in which it is going to be developed. And the other situation is you develop the same story, but you do it 2 months in advance, 2 months before the sprint in which it is going to be developed. Which one do you think will be able to handle changes better? Right? I would imagine you would have said the first one, because if you develop the story 2 months ago, now the product owner has 2 more months to change their mind. And then if they do, you will have to go back and update the story. But if you just develop it 1 week ago before the sprint, anyways, no one's going to look at it, right? No team member is going to look at it in the 2 months, even if you have developed it 2 months earlier. So there is really no value or no benefit of doing it sooner in this case. If you just did it 1 week before, that would have been sufficient, right? So this is what I mean by benefit. The benefit of delaying is that you have more information to work with, more information which is concrete as well as stable, right? That is the benefit. And obviously we know the cost of delay. Usually the cost of delay is to miss a deadline. So this principle is all about balancing these two. And what it says is that perform an activity only when delaying it any further, the cost of delaying it any further then exceeds the benefit, right? That is the only time when you should execute it. Until then, you just wait. Okay. So, and when you start practicing this this principle, you will see that you suddenly lose interest in long-term planning or preparing for something that is way out in the future, because you understand and you realize that a lot of things are going to change by the time it actually, your future plans come to fruition, and you would have wasted your time. But more importantly, if you do long-term planning, you are setting you're drawing a line in the sand, and now you will be resistant to change. You will not like change because then it disturbs your plans. So when you apply this principle of just in time, you start seeing the futility of doing long-term planning, right? So let's talk about some tips to apply this principle. And again, we'll look at a scenario immediately after this. So in the previous principle of delivering value early, I asked you to take the deliverable and break that into slices and delivering it sooner. In this principle of just in time, you have to break your effort to create the deliverable into slices. Please make sure you understand the difference between breaking the deliverable itself into slices, which is part of the first principle of delivering value sooner and frequently, versus breaking the effort, the tasks that you take to create the deliverable. You take the tasks and break them into slices so that you can execute them multiple times in multiple increments and iterations. So here in this principle, that is the approach you take to apply this principle. The second aspect of this is that don't commit to anything that is far out in the future, because again, you fully understand that if you commit to something that is far out in the future, you will become resistant to change. The moment you commit something, you want to make sure you stick to that. But then we all know how things keep changing all the time. So you will become resistant to change. So please do not do that. And the third thing is, whenever you are struggling with information, if you believe that you do not have sufficient information to do a particular task, then that is a prime candidate for you to delay it further. Unless, of course, the cost of delaying it is going to be significant. Then that's a different case. But otherwise, it's a good reminder for you to postpone it, wait for some more time. Hopefully, you will get some more information in the meantime. As long as, again, as long as it's not going to be really bad to delay that further. Okay. So what I would like you to do now is to again quickly read this scenario and apply this just-in-time principle to this, and tell yourself rather, how would you handle this situation before I share my thoughts on it. So please take a minute to go through this and form your opinion on how you will apply this principle.
Ronak, just quickly, while everyone's going through the questions, are you able to see the Q&A section? I just want to check.
Yes, I am. I am able to, and I'm reading. Yes.
Perfect. Cool. I just wanted to make sure you could see it. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So I see a lot of tool related questions, and unfortunately, I will not be able to address them because it's not really core to the topic. We can certainly do something different about the tools. Seems like there's a lot of interest. Coming back to the topic here, I think one of the question is, do you not risk overrun if short-term tasks take a lot longer than planned? So I think I understand your question, that what if the tasks that you currently are working on take much longer than you had originally estimated, then that will create some problem. Yes, of course. I just want to point out that this is not necessarily what I'm talking about in just in time. So if there is a confusion, I want to clear that. But otherwise, what you say is true. And I think the point you are making has to do with estimation more than anything else. So if it's just that you estimated poorly, you did not include the complexities, implementation complexities when you estimated, and hence this has happened. So it's just an estimation problem, which is not what we are dealing about right now. We are talking about doing something or delaying something until you really have to do it. Okay, that is really what I'm trying to bring out here, is that just because you've been assigned a task does not mean you start doing it. You don't start working on something until it is absolutely necessary, until any further delay is going to cost you more than the benefits you will get by delaying it. And the real benefit is that you will get more information. As time goes, you will get more information, more changes. And if you have not started working on it, then you can easily incorporate these changes. Otherwise, it will impact you. So I hope that addresses that. Coming back to this scenario, I hope people have had time to read this. Take a few more seconds to form your opinion before I share mine. Okay, so hopefully you have some opinion, at least you've made a mental note of it. So this is what I would do to implement this just-in-time principle to this situation. And again, if we are going too fast for your preference, because it's a short webinar, we will be sharing the video recording of this, so you can certainly go through this again, pause, rewind, go through it multiple times, and then you'll be able to connect the dots. Okay, so this is how I would deal with this situation, right? So you should suggest to Jennifer that you can park the effort to get the exact wording. See, what is happening here really is that you have all the information you need in a user story. Now product owner wants to give you the exact wording of the messages, whether it's an error message or a success message to the user. What will they see on the screen? The exact message, not error 404, not that, right? Some meaningful messages. the product owner wants to give you those messages as part of the user story. And what your approach is that, okay, we can, instead of spending 10 more minutes on that because you have to think about it and you want to be precise with the wording, let's keep it at the end of this session. Only if we have time, we will do it. But if we don't have time, that's not a big deal, because the reality is that we don't need this information right now. The dev and QA folks do not need to know the exact wording in order to estimate the complexity of this user story and how much effort it will take, and even start doing their own planning for development and testing. They don't need this. They will need it only during the sprint, when they actually start developing. That is the time when they need it. And so that is what you're suggesting, that let's hold off. If we have time, we'll do it. Most likely we may not have time, but that's okay. It's not a big deal, because we can always get it later during one of the playbacks. And if you've not heard that term, playback is essentially every 2-3 days when you as team, Agile team, shows what you have done in the past 2-3 days to the product owner, not as a demo, just for them to see and give some feedback, early feedback. That is really what a playback is. So it's not a demo. Anyway, so, and the additional advantage of this, besides allowing you to move on to another different user story during this grooming session, use that time wisely. Besides that advantage, the other is that now it gives the product owner more time that they can make sure that the messaging can be consistent with other screens in this product. So I hope, again, you can see how a just-in-time principle allows you to not necessarily do something the moment someone asks you to do it, but intelligently think about it. Hey, is there any benefit in doing it right now? Or is there any cost to doing it right now? And delay it as much as possible before you start incurring the cost of the delays. Okay. Any questions specific to this second principle of just-in-time? Yeah, I think Mukti also gave a similar answer to this scenario. So that's great job. Beryl asks, I tend to be a bit too detailed in my specs. How do I handle not being too detailed in user stories? Excellent question. We are going to talk about that a little bit in one of the upcoming principles as well, but let me quickly add my thought to your question, because I think it is common for many BAs who come from the waterfall world and are used to writing heavy documents, right? So we tend to add a lot of details. We are analytical in nature, so we want to put everything out there. What I would say is, in Agile, first of all, this is very common that the developers will not even read your user stories if they are too long. All right, I have heard this from many developers. It is very true. Just because your developers may not have told you so does not mean it is not happening. It might actually be happening to you as well. So in Agile, because of the way things are with Agile, people really don't have a lot of patience and appetite to read long documents. The focus is on creating software. So as soon as you realize that, and you tell yourself, all right, I'm putting in so much effort in writing so much details, but then people are not really taking advantage of that. They might not even be reading it. They might not be reading it exactly because you are putting so much detail. I think when you realize that experientially, you will start putting less value. The other quick solution to that is ask your team, right? Find a developer with whom you have a good relationship, find a QA person and ask them, show them a user story which you find detailed, and ask them to cross any sections which they did not care about, they did not really need from the user story. And that should also give you some thought on what to cut out from your user story. Okay, so again, in the interest of time, I'm going to continue.
Ronak?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So what I want to know, okay, on that scenario, I just wanted to check, whose job is it to actually put the messages together for like a requirement like that? I know, like in my experience with the current project I'm on, they expect me to give them a message and then they must say yes or no. Is that a BA function or a business function? At what level do we stop at?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I would say it's the BA function because it is requirements, and the requirements come from the business. But I have seen examples where they expect the BAs to do it. Maybe they look at BA as more of a product manager or a proxy product owner, and feel like BAs should do their own research and make messaging consistent. they should spend their time investigating what is happening in other screens of the product, etc., etc. So I would say there's no one right answer. More common is for business to do it, but in your specific situation, the dynamics may be such that they expect the BAs to do it. And if I were the BA in that case, I would gladly take that responsibility, because that's a slight more power that you have as a BA than just asking questions and taking notes.
Okay, understood.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Okay, great. So let me continue, and I'm looking at the time here, and we may not be able to finish all 6. I think I'm okay with that. I don't want to compromise. The ones that we go through, I want to make sure we go through it well. So probably we can cover 2 more at least. Okay, so the third one is just enough. Now, the previous principle of just in time balanced 2 things: the benefit of delay versus the cost of delay. Just enough balances the quality and the scope, right? Essentially, when you apply this principle, you firmly believe that progress is better than perfection. You also believe that good enough and done, you would take that any day over perfect deliverable, right? You would also believe in the law of diminishing returns, marginal returns. If you're not familiar with that law, it essentially says that beyond a certain point, the more effort you put, the less returns you get, lesser than even the effort that you're putting, which means there is really no point in putting any more effort to improve something. It's already good enough. That is really what just enough talks about. So in Agile, just enough is a very, very important principle, because it also helps you reduce waste, which is a key aspect of Agile and Lean methodologies, is to reduce waste. So don't do anything more than you really need to. So here, I would say the 2 tips you should keep in mind when you apply this is, make sure you use the customer's definition of good enough and done, not your definition. It should be the customer who should say, this is what good enough means to me. This is the minimum I want to see. And usually that is much more objective to express the minimum value or the minimum requirements. It is easier for product owner to tell you those rather than for them to give you the perfect requirements. Okay. So make sure you take customer's definition of good enough and done. And second is, the moment you believe that you have reached that good enough as defined by the customer, right? The only time you should continue beyond this is when the undesirable or negative impact of imperfect solution, imperfect quality is very high, and it is very likely that this impact will occur. So only if this is true, that if you don't have it perfect, then it's going to cost you badly, and it is very likely that it will happen. Only in that case you should continue, otherwise you should stop at good enough. There are very few situations, if you're talking about nuclear, anything to do with nuclear sites or anything to do with flights where human safety is important. Obviously you need perfection. You cannot accept anything less than perfection, because the cost of imperfection is going to be human lives, which is huge impact, even if it is unlikely. So those are the only exceptions, I would say. For pretty much everything else that we deal in, the type of industries that we work in, financials, insurance, retail, those kind of things, where human safety is not impacted by our software applications, you should definitely stop at good enough. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, just in the interest of time, I'm going to quickly summarize the scenario and give you my perspectives, so that again, you still have this video that you can go back to, and you can pause this, do your own thinking, and then compare it with what I have said. So the situation here is that you join an Agile team, which has already been in operations for 6 months. They've been already doing product development. There is already one BA before you joined. His name is Jay, and essentially he also likes to groom stories just 2-3 weeks before a sprint. The product owner and the development team expects the BA, Jay in this case, only to create low fidelity screen mockups, nothing more, right? Just basic, just wireframe the screen or mock up the screen on paper, or just using PowerPoint, nothing more. The PO uses it to validate the requirements, and the development team uses it to estimate and the complexity for the story. But Jay, and by the way, and then this is as part of the user story. Then during the sprint, there is one developer who is a UX expert, user experience, and he is the one who actually then does the screen design, the final screen design. So, but the reality is that Jay has some prior UX experience, and he enjoys developing high fidelity screen designs because he is good at it, and he has done that in the past. So he actually starts creating that by himself, thinking that he's going to save some time for the developer to do it later, right? So this is the situation, and the question is, how do you feel about Jay's approach of doing the screen designs, even though no one is expecting him to do? So again, you can pause this later and do some thinking. I'll share my response here. In my opinion, if you apply this situation or this principle of just enough, Jay should stop designing the screens if any of the following is true. If the high fidelity screens are not helping the PO to validate the requirements any better than the low fidelity ones, there's no need. If the developer is not really saving any time because he's still going in and spending almost same time to make sure that the screens are of his liking, because this is a very subjective thing, right? Then again, there is no need for Jay to do it. He's just wasting time. Jay can do a lot more by saving that time and not developing these screens, high fidelity screens. He can take that extra time and use it to do other things. If that is also true, then Jay should not be doing it. So this is an example of why if you do more than enough, you are actually the opportunity cost is very high, and on agile projects that is not a good thing. Okay, so the next principle here is bias for quick learning. All right, so essentially think of this situation: you are driving for the first time in a new city, completely unknown to you, and even when you have a GPS with you, don't you frequently look at the GPS? Even if there's a voice thing guiding you to take a turn, you still, every few seconds, you will look at the GPS one glance to make sure that you are still on the right road, that you have not missed any turns, right? That is essentially what I'm talking about here. That you should not go too far without wanting to validate that the direction in which you're going is still correct. And the other aspect of this principle is that you have a strong bias for evidence-based discovery over assumptions. You don't want to make assumptions when you have the opportunity to find out for real by asking someone. So that is what this principle is all about. There are a few tips you can keep in mind. Again, like the second principle, here you can break down your approach, your effort to create a deliverable into multiple iterations. That will help you to learn faster and get feedback faster if you break it into increments. Break the effort, not the deliverable. Then make sure that you make learning as one of the goals of each iteration, right? Besides getting feedback and validation of what you're doing, whether it's right or wrong. The other goal you should have is to learn something new, okay? The formula that you can pretty much use for every situation when you are creating a deliverable is that whenever you are assigned a new deliverable, quickly create a template for what the final deliverable will look like. Create a template, put it on paper if you have to. Don't have to waste time creating a beautiful template in one of the apps. Just even put it on paper or type it in email, and then get it validated before you start the actual effort of putting the deliverable together. Make sure you create a template of the deliverable, what it will look like, what it should look like, get validation on that, and then you start the actual work of creating the deliverable. If you keep this much in mind, you've taken care of this principle to a large extent. And always prefer a show and tell approach, okay? So whenever you are describing something that is observable, then you should be not just using words. You should stand up, use the whiteboard, draw it out. If there's no whiteboard, use paper and pen, draw it out, okay? Or you can even draw it out in one of the Microsoft Office apps. But the point is, if there's anything visual in nature that you are describing through words, that is not a good way to do it. So start getting in the habit of creating some visual representation of what you're trying to say. When you do that, you get much richer validation and feedback from your stakeholders. Okay. Very quickly, just a quick minute on this scenario. Essentially, Lynn, who's the project manager, has asked you for a favor. She wants you to put together a report analyzing the velocity of your team for the past 1 year. And she expects you to create a graph which shows the velocity of your team for the past 12 months and some insights that you've gathered. So the right approach in this case would be, instead of spending all the time in creating the graph, first collecting all the data for the team velocity, charting it out on a graph, and then drawing insights, and then sending it to the project manager, the first thing you should do is quickly create a mock-up of the graph. You don't even have real data. You've not even started collecting data. Just try to visualize what the graph might look like. Is it a bar graph, a line graph, a pie chart? Think of it, put it on paper, just draw it out. Think of some possible insights that you might generate. That we have consistently improved our velocity, or our velocity really jumped up when we made this specific change to the team. It really shot up, right? Think of some possible insights and mock this up, put it on paper, or quickly type it in email, send it to the project manager, Lynn in this case, ask her to validate this. It will help her also make sure that she knows exactly how she wants to use this, and she will give you feedback about this. She may say, hey, don't use a bar graph, please use a line graph with an average shown as well, things like that. So make sure you create a template, get validation of the template, and then you start the actual analysis. Okay, so I'm going to just zip through the last two principles, which one was reducing waste. And what you will see when you look at these slides, which you will have access to later in the video as well, is that I've listed a few typical sources of waste which you should be looking for actively and eliminating. And there is a scenario here as well, and I've given you my perspective on that. And finally, the last principle was just getting it done, right? Think of Nike, just do it. Here, it is all about collaboration, communication, coordination, and co-creation. Yeah, let me just take 30 seconds on this. So essentially, what this means is being proactive, right? Being proactive, not waiting for someone else to solve the problems that are becoming bottlenecks for the entire team. Even if it's not necessarily your responsibility, you should still try to go ahead and do it, because that's what it takes to make the Agile team successful. You just got to do things, make things happen. Do what is needed, not because you like it, but even when you don't like something, but it is required to be done, you should still do it. You should have an inclination to work with others, right? Even if they are across the other boundaries, if they are not in your team, doesn't matter. You should have some inclination to work with people who have some good capabilities that you can leverage. And then obviously you need to reciprocate by helping them when they need your help as well. And never stop at just pointing out problems or gaps in someone's output or a deliverable. You take the next step by giving them solutions as well, right? When you do these things, that is when you are really getting things done. One thing I want to quickly emphasize is, this not my job mentality. This has come from waterfall, traditional SDLC. Hey, it's not my job. That is absolute no-no for Agile, right? So make sure you don't fall in that trap. Okay, we had another scenario. I'm going to skip through benefits. So let me just summarize. Again, the time is very short. It flew away, at least in my experience. I hope in yours as well. And I hope that, at least the 4 principles that we have been able to cover in some details have been useful. I think this is just a start. And you can certainly go through this video again to derive more value from it. But if I had to summarize, I would just quickly say that don't just think of Agile as a methodology, please. I just want to reiterate it. It is really how you are. It is how you should be. And remember these 5 things, right, in terms of principles. Make sure you deliver the value in iterations. Don't do a big bang delivery of the benefits. Break them down. Whatever you work on right now should be critical at this moment. Don't try to do things that are going to happen. Don't try to do things for other things that are going to happen in future. Do what is important right now. Don't go too far without getting validation of your direction, right? And don't do anything more than is necessary. That is very important in Agile. Do not create waste. And finally, every single day, you should be collaborating, coordinating, communicating, and co-creating. Co-creating really means that I'm not just going to be trying to be a hero here. I will try to work with whoever has some useful contributions to make, and collaboratively, and we will co-author things, because it will be much better than if I just did it myself. So do that every single day. And I would suggest start practicing these principles. on every single task you perform. Don't wait for large macro level of deliverables to apply these principles on. Any small task, no matter how small it is, you should be able to apply these principles. And then once you do that, then you enroll others in doing the same. In fact, that's what I did. I realized that I was implementing some principles which was giving me success. So I took a step back. I kind of organized my thoughts, put it in this format, the way I'm showing it to you. Then I started sharing it with the people that I was coaching, because I coach a lot of agile teams. I started sharing it with them and saw that they were also getting value. And then I started bringing them in my trainings as well. In terms of the embedding these principles in the training topics, and not just the content of the training, but also how I deliver training is also built on these principles. So since I'm on this slide anyways, I just want to tell you that there are 3 things that I'm doing with FTI. One was today's webinar. The other is a virtual online course on crafting effective user stories. In fact, we have Luis, at least Luis, and maybe there are others as well who were part of that course. It was pretty successful based on the feedback we got. We are going to repeat that. And the focus here is mainly to, we cover many topics, but the 2 main focus areas are how to size stories better, how to create perfect right size stories, which is a pain point for most teams. And second is how to write very effective user stories, which are clear and take less time than you might be spending today in writing user stories. And then the second is a 2-day workshop, which we'll be doing just before the BA Summit at the end of September. This is mainly for BAs and product owners who are new to Agile. Even if they are experienced business analysts, if they are new to Agile, maybe less than 2-3 years of experience in Agile, then you will benefit from this a lot, because we'll cover the entire BA role and the best practices of how you can be a very effective BA and drive the team to success. So that's what you can look forward to. This is where you can register. And in the remaining, well, we just have a minute. Let's see if there is a question I can take. Ryan, do you have any important question that you've gleaned so far?
Sorry, Ronak, I was on mute there.
Okay.
There was quite a few in the Q&A section.
Okay.
There's 13 sitting in the Q&A section at the moment, so don't.
Yeah, I'm going through that as well. Okay.
Too many to answer all in one.
Okay, so we are. I can stay back for a few more minutes just to go through. So if you had a question there, you can hang on. Others, if you want to leave, please go ahead. But before you go, I want to thank you for participating. Again, it was a pleasure. Time really flew by. I wish we had more time, but I really hope to see you in one of the trainings or even at the BA Summit. So bye, take care, good night. And if you have a question that you want me to answer, just stay back for a few more minutes.
And obviously from my side, at FTI, Ronak, thanks again so much. I'm learning so much about Agile myself, and I can highly recommend your methodology. So everybody, we really appreciate you participating. Thank you, Ronak. And yeah, we're hoping that you're going to join up for some of the other exciting projects with Ronak.
Sure, looking forward to. Okay, so I'm going to see if there are any relevant questions which I can address right now. Give me a second to go through some of them.
And we will be sharing the recording, so we'll communicate with all of you tomorrow as to where it's going to be. We have been live streaming on Facebook as well, so we've managed to share a bit more than we thought we could.
So one question was, have you found the take on this mindset change successful in culture strong organization? Excellent questions. Yes, it's always a challenge. When the top management does not see the need to change the culture, then there's nothing anyone can do, frankly. And I've also not had success in bringing about large-scale changes or improvements because of the fact that the constraints put on the team were just too strong. And when I'm saying constraint, I'm talking about the management culture and how they like to command and control things. Having said that, you can still employ most of these principles at a more granular level, at a more micro level, and still derive value, at least for yourself. if it cannot help the overall project because of these constraints, it can still help you and your teammates in being more efficient, in creating less waste. So there is still value in these principles, not probably as much as you would get in a much open-minded organization. I hope that answers the question. Is there any other question that anyone wants me to answer? Okay, guess not. So again, bye. Thanks a lot for your time. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute there.
Oh, okay.
My question is more on reading up on Agile. I'm very new to the Agile space. I'm from a waterfall sort of methodology, and I'm trying to understand exactly what the BA role is within the Scrum besides documenting user stories. What else do they do? Where else can I read up? Is there any?
So frankly, besides doing general Google research on BA role in Agile, there is no real authoritative book or article, frankly, because technically the BA role does not even exist on Agile. There is no BA role. There are only 3 roles: product owner, Scrum Master, and the development team. I'm talking about the Scrum methodology here, which is the most popular in the world. So there is not even a BA role. So because of that, you will not really find any book covering this aspect, right? So I'm going to definitely cover this in the training that we are going to do at the end of September, the 2-day workshop. This is exactly the goal of that training, is to help people who are new to Agile quickly learn the best practices. But if you're not able to attend that, I would say just general Google research. At least I'm not aware of any authoritative book on doing business analysis in Agile.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome. Any other questions?
Ronak?
Yes.
Okay. Your slide earlier said that you share insights. So did you mean lessons learned?
Oh, you're talking about that scenario. I think the 4th scenario. Okay,
yes.
yeah. No, not lessons learned. So essentially the scenario there was that the project manager, Lynn, expects you to go through the velocity. Velocity is essentially how many story points the team actually completed in a sprint, right? So Lynn wants you to just go through those numbers and create a graph out of it, and then try to make sense of what that graph is saying, right? Create a story behind it. That is what I meant by insights, not learnings, not retrospective or learnings for the team. Yeah, it's just how do you describe this chart in a more layman business terms? That is what I mean by insights there.
Okay, but then at what point do you touch lessons learned? After each sprint, or?
Okay.
Or is this...
Yes. If you're using Scrum, then it is actually that is one of the ceremonies of a Scrum methodology. So at the end of every sprint, one of the last things you do, actually, the last thing you do in a Scrum, technically in a sprint, is retrospective, where it's usually 1-hour session, very strongly and well facilitated by the Scrum Master, and it's a very safe environment for the team to discuss what worked, and more importantly, what should they change going forward to improve as a team.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Welcome.
Ronak?
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. Ronak, can you hear me?
Yes, Marinus, go ahead.
I just got a question. So traditionally, there was the BA function, but nowadays within a agile environment, anyone within a crew could essentially be a BA or fulfill the BA role. Going forward, how do you see a traditional BA fitting into an agile team, and more particularly into a Scrum crew?
Okay, so I actually, this is what I've seen firsthand. When Agile started becoming popular around 10-12 years ago, there was a crisis in the BA community. BAs thought that their jobs would be extinct. Well, guess what has happened? People are still looking for BAs with Agile experience, right? And the reason for that is the the agile framework heavily relies on hyper collaboration between the product owner and the development team, right? Because there is no BA to connect them. So they need to collaborate heavily with each other. But in reality, that does not happen, because the product owner is a business stakeholder who has other operational responsibilities. They have another day job. They can barely take out time to give you requirements in the grooming sessions, 1 or 2 hours a day. They don't have enough time to sit the entire day with the development team and kind of guide them on a minute-to-minute basis. So the reality is that the PA role is very important, even though it's not officially part of the framework. Practically speaking, it is very important. Almost we are the proxy of this product owner, right? For the team, we become the proxy product owner. So that is what has already happened, right? But in terms of answering your question about the future, I see kind of 2 new trends that are coming in. While this will continue, that the BAs, the traditional waterfall BAs, I strongly believe you should start giving yourself the opportunity to work in agile projects. If you have that luxury to pick something, please do. You do need agile experience. It is not going away. In addition to that trend to continue, the 2 new trends are, one is everything is going digital, right? I'm sure you've heard digital transformation is happening everywhere. As part of that, when that hits and becomes mainstream in a few years from now, 5-10 years from now, I believe, with AI and machine learning and blockchain, all that, at that time, the BAs will have to reinvent themselves. They will have to either go significantly towards the business side and become product managers and start coming up with requirements, not just take requirements, but coming up with requirements, or they'll have to go on the technology side and learn these new technologies and start helping organizations on how to apply these technologies to create business value. But they'll have to first become a technology expert before they start helping organizations on how to leverage those technologies. So that is one trend that is on the horizon, where the BAs will have to, they cannot be in the middle ground anymore. They'll either have to go on the extreme left of towards the business or extreme right towards technology. And the other trend that I'm seeing, which is slightly smaller trend, is a lot of BAs are becoming Scrum Masters. Because the Scrum Master role requires servant leadership, and the project managers who are used to command and control, who are used to authority and responsibility, they are not able to adjust to the fact that Scrum Master has a lot of responsibility but no authority. They do not get any authority, they cannot pick the team members, nothing like that. So they are struggling with that, shifting their mindset down to something that they think is a demotion for them. But a BA has always been a servant leader, and so they are much better at being a Scrum Master. So you can be that as well.
Hi, Ronak, it's Mpumi here.
Yeah, hi.
I just wanted to ask you, how do you manage a customer that maybe believes that because you're taking the Agile approach, then you sort of don't need any documentation?
Yeah, that's a very common thing, that, hey, it's Agile, let's not document anything. Yeah. So this is how you do it. The first time your demo, the sprint demo, which happens at the end of every sprint, that is really your vehicle to bring out the importance of at least some documentation. You don't have to do it as thoroughly, as rigorously as you do in the waterfall, but you still need some documentation. And this is how you can kind of convince the team. So what will end up happening is that at least over some time, at least in few sprints, you should start tracking this trend. If the product owner says, hey, I see this, I don't see this feature that I'd asked for. I don't see a requirement that I had explicitly said in one of the grooming sessions. It's missing, right? So please add that. Whenever they make these kind of statements, as a business analyst, you should write that down, log it. Every time they say it, write it down. On this date, this was mentioned by the product owner. This is the specific feature that they had talked about earlier, at least they claim, but it is not there. And over time, when you have sufficient data points, that's when you go to the team and said, guys, we are, I know we don't have any documentation right now because we are relying on our memory, right? Every time the product owner gives you requirements, the entire team is there. So everyone's listening. And that's why people are confident that you don't need documentation, because we remember what they said. But if you can show real data that No, the product owner seems to have to remind us many times, and this is unnecessarily leading to defects and rework just because we forget things. Let's start documenting at least basic stuff. So then with this, armed with this data, you can introduce the concept and the appetite for documentation, and then slowly increase the formality of your documentation until the time where the product owner does not have to point out anymore that the team is missing requirements. Did that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Then is it okay if I just use cases and a use case diagram rather than going like a complete business requirement document?
Okay, so if you are an agile project, actually you don't need either of them. You don't need a BRD, nor do you need a use case. What you need is a few models, like a product model, right? Some visual diagram to create to show the features of the product and who the users are. You can research scope model. Scope model is what you can research, and you can create a scope model for your product. And that would be one of the things you need to create. You can create an end-to-end workflow or the process flow, and you can create a data model, right, or the domain model. These are the three things you can create. And other than that, all you need to do is for every backlog item, right, for every user story, rather, you just need to create, for every story, you need to create a user story, which has a very simple format. Again, you can Google it and you will see that it's a very simple format. It's a very light form of documentation. That this is all you really need on an agile project. You don't need to create use cases nor a proper BRD or FRD for that matter.
Okay, thank you.
Ronak, just to add on to what Nompumelelo is saying, a backlog list and user stories will serve as documentation. So because you have backlog documented, that could be first part of your documentation, and then the user stories will then add on to that.
Right. So sorry, I missed the question.
So there's no question. I was just confirming and agreeing with you in terms of
yes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I missed that. Yes, absolutely. That's true.
Okay.
Okay. I have 2 more minutes. If there is any more question.
Hi, Ronak. It's Marina.
Hi. Yeah.
Ronak, we've got a situation where we follow Scrum, but it's more towards the less methodology of Scrum, where we multiple teams working towards a common goal. So it's not just one team having one deliverable.
Okay.
Our problem that exists in my organization is that we've got multiple teams, but only recently another BA joined. So currently we're 2, having to service multiple crews. And then also, which ceremonies within Scrum and Agile do we actually now take part in? Because we have to service a wide variety of crews or business units.
Okay. Sorry, so Marina, again, actually your voice is coming in very soft. I caught only some parts of it and I missed the question. Can you quickly, I heard most of it, but can you quickly repeat just the question part?
I basically just want to find out, being a lesser amount of business analysts, fewer than the amount of crews that exist in the entire product delivery team. Which Scrum ceremonies within Agile do we now take part in? Because, I mean, we can't just be everywhere and satisfy everyone. How do you suggest we approach something like this, that in the less methodology in terms of Scrum?
I understand. So essentially you're saying that one BA is supporting more than one teams, right?
That is correct, yes.
Right, yeah. So I have encountered that before now. There's no formula, unfortunately, Marinus, in terms of which ceremonies you can skip. There is no formula really. What I can say is the only practical advice that I've been able to give and has successfully worked is that the BA creates some time slots, right? Because if you don't provide any structure at all, then you will go crazy because you are writing a story for one group and a developer from the other group comes and asks you some questions, and it will be very difficult for you to keep switching the context, right? You can't multitask like that. So what you can do is set some time aside saying, okay, between 11 to 1 p.m., I'm available to answer any question for this group A, right? From 1 to 3, I can answer any question from group B. right? And then the rest of the time you can plan your meetings or writing user stories, etc. This was just an example. You can pick your slots appropriately, but the point is you need to bring a little bit of more structure and give people more guidance on when, how can they engage with you and when you are available for them. Because if you don't add this structure, you'll just go crazy, as I'm sure you are going right now.
It's exactly how I feel at this stage, but yeah, that actually helps. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Unfortunately, I'll have to drop now, but if you still have any more questions that were not answered, please put it on this chat. We will, we will go through them later, and if you can give your email address, and we'll find some way to connect with you. Okay.
Thanks again, Ronak. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone who's there.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Chat soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.